Hello, I'm Tony.
And I'm Kimberly.
And we are
Better Together.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are on the 5th installment of a series on communication. If you have missed any of these, go back, check them out. They're on the YouTube channel. You can see.
Subscribe,
share. They're on they're on TikTok, YouTube, several other platforms. Anyway, we are going to wrap this series up.
So are you saying this is the final installment?
This is the final installment, and we are talking about building a culture of open communication. And here is something this is a statement that I believe is true, that a culture is the result of your values. Your values will determine your culture. And if you want a culture of communication, effective communication, because remember...
Values, what you do and what you allow, or culture, what you do and what you allow?
Yep. Culture is the result of what you do and what you allow, and what you do and what you allow is based on your values. Now, relationship, which is marriage, it rises and falls on communication. We've talked about that. So if you missed those, go back. The last episode, we talked quite a bit about that. But we're going to talk about developing and fostering and maintaining a culture of communication. So a few things that we want to hit on and come right out of the gate with is the importance of regular and open communication habits. So what are practical tips?
So I remember this. We would be so intentional about, we called it couch time.
Couch time.
And so we would sit there on the couch, and for 5 minutes, it was back then it was 5 minutes, and we would have uninterrupted conversations. And this is when our children were little. Do you remember
We
that?
can put them in the other room. Now we don't necessarily, we can't put them in the other room. Now they're just kind of free range all over the house.
Now we invite them on the couch or in another chair, and they watch the show.
And we have learned some things about that. Having a designated time for communication, whatever that looks like, incredibly important. When not to do it. When not to do it is the moment I walk in from work or she walks in from work, and we have all of this stuff. It's not a share your baggage time.
Right. Exactly what's happened in your day and all of your...
Yeah, and recap of your day, that can be some. I feel closer to you when I know your struggles and I know your challenges and I kind of know what you're going through. But it's important to have designated opportunities to sit down and do wellness checks.
Well, and I would also say, right before bed, probably not a good time to check in.
No, probably not.
That's not good for me.
Those can lead to some late night conversations. But, what you don't want to fall into and what you want to avoid is just the idea of being business partners or cohabitating. I see a lot of people who have been married for any amount of time. They come in and they both fall into their own individual routine. Developing a routine and having things that you enjoy doing together. And when I say doing it together, you don't necessarily both have to be hands-on in a particular activity, but having some commonalities that you are intentional about sharing. These days you can binge watch television. That's okay, but there's not a whole lot of communication and connection.
No, if anything, well, for us, I feel like when we do try to binge watch shows, we can pick apart what those people are doing and be like, that's so crazy. That doesn't work.
Well, think about it this way. Do you remember way back when you first began dating and you would go to the movie theater and you would make out during the movie, not really watch the movie?
What?
Yeah, and
people
then
did that?
People used to do that. And then later it got to where you would go and you would just watch the movie, and then that was your date night, But anyway, how about encouraging and appreciating honesty and openness when it comes to communication? Now that's challenging because there's that word vulnerability that comes in there. But to be intentional about being honest and being open and communicating even the difficult things and having a commitment to that. What are your thoughts?
That could be really challenging, but it's very important to do that because you are able to keep those lines of communication open, and it doesn't allow for other things to come in and continue the wedge.
So that's one. So that is one. But what are other benefits of having an open communication culture?
What are the benefits?
Yeah.
I kind of find out I like you.
Right.
Not only do I like you, but you're like my best friend.
How about this one? Things don't accumulate.
Yeah.
Generally, things don't build up because sometimes when we have altercations, there's other issues that are kind of boiling beneath the surface.
And then that allows for distance.
It does.
Then that allows for other things.
So how about developing some long-term strategies for maintaining open communication? In other words, what are some really good things that will help couples in relationship continue, not just start strong, but to continue to be good communicators and effectively growing in relationship?
So I think a commonality for us is that we use the Bible.
So a point of reference.
We have the Bible to go to.
Okay.
That helps for you and I.
So let me tell you why that is so important. Because it's not just her arbitrary opinion on an issue or my arbitrary opinion on an issue that can change according to our feelings, but there's a reference point, something that holds a value that we have said is going to be a focal point or an anchor in our relationship. So we always have a commonality of communication. Incredibly important.
Yes. Yeah. And
I've run into this a lot with marriage counseling. Let's just say you grow up and your home of origin is just totally different than my home of origin. And these come together, and I just simply don't have that reference point, and you don't have that reference point. That's why that commonality of Christianity, and I say the Bible, but whatever those core values are, I would recommend that they be good ones. But what are those core values? And that becomes a point of conversation. That's why the Bible is very clear. It says, "Be not unequally yoked together." What that means is when you come into a relationship, you need to come into a relationship with people who have like values. Now, one thing that we're going to be dealing with on future episodes is what happens when you find yourself in a relationship for whatever reason and you don't have that common communication or those common values. How do I work my way through that? Very, very difficult. But number one, common reference point of communication. Number two,
and I would say commitment.
Commitment, yes.
No matter what, I'm committed. I'm committed to you. You're committed to me.
Yeah, so at your core, you care for me.
Yes.
At my core, I have your best interest at heart. And that is a word called commitment. And I know that's something that's not popular in our culture today, but commitment. Again, a common point of reference, of values, a commitment to each other. And when we talk about how we communicate, there's three aspects that are very important. One, I think that it's important that you commit to honoring each other in your communication, because in our culture, it's so easy just to tear down and point out the negatives.
I would agree with that. Yeah. And I have a tendency to do that. My personality is I have a tendency to look at the negative, and I don't want to do that.
And it's incredibly important that her knowing that is called self-aware. Very often we get into self-consciousness, and that makes us volatile and dangerous. But being self-aware of a tendency to kind of default to the negative, you can fortify yourself against that. Again, to establish and maintain these values, one, honor each other. And part of honoring each other means that in our relationship, that I treat her as a sister in Christ, that I treat her as a fellow believer, as one of God's children, and that helps me honor her more intentionally.
Yeah, and I would say, and with that, it allows me to see beyond you and beyond, or I'm assuming it allows you to see beyond me and my frailties and.
Yeah. Well, how about this last aspect, patience? How important is patience in communication? There have been so many times where I've just thrown up my hands and said, you know what, I'm done. I can't take any more of this conversation. I'll catch up with you.
And I have actually learned to not be very patient with that word, I'm done, because I would be like, what, you're done? Does that mean like you're done? Like as in done with our marriage? Like, hello, you can't, because guess what? You're committed.
Yeah, be careful with that terminology, because if you say I'm done, I mean, man, think about the damage that we can do. And there's statements that we make.
Right.
You always or you never. One, I told Kim a long time ago, I'm not consistent enough to always or never do anything. I wish that I were. It's just not one of my character traits.
So when he explained that I'm done means I just need some time to walk away, it helped me understand, well, you know what? I need to learn to be patient.
Yeah.
It just means we just have to be patient in the process.
We talked about this.
And not quit.
Exactly. And we talked about this in the context of dealing with altercations or whatever when it got ugly in a relationship, the importance of being patient. But sometimes you have to press pause. So let me say this. When you're being patient or you're dealing with addressing an issue or you're trying to keep open communication, if you do say, I want to pause, and this just happened with us recently, okay, how long? What are we talking about? Do you need an hour? Do you need 10 minutes? Do you need whatever? Because you never want to stop that communication. You want to have it free flowing. Even if it's rough and rocky at times, it's better than nothing.
Right. And I would say that that's really helped us because I feel like you and I, we have a tendency to over communicate.
Yeah.
And, you know, for both of us. And so here recently that has allowed me to be like, I just need some time. You know, for you like to establish the time. And I've been, like, that's really good. I just need 30 minutes or whatever, because I don't want to say anything that's going to be more damaging, more detrimental. And I'm going to get my thoughts together.
Yeah.
I have a lot to bring to the table.
Yeah, it's sometimes the list of attacks. But sometimes you mark off those things.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And I wouldn't be looking to do that.
Yeah.
So I think patience is very important.
Very important. So commit to open and continual communication. Remember that communication as a culture will be the result of communication being a value. So value it, talk about it, lay out the guidelines and the importance of it, discuss it, have after action meetings with your communication, but commit to communicate. Yeah, check in with each other.
Check in, and that sounds, it's not corny.
Yeah, I got to share this with you. This happened recently. We were having a conversation, or we were having an interaction, and I said, "Okay, let's do an after action." And she's like, "Well, that sounds so business-like." But I'm going to be honest with you.
I'm like, yeah, after action.
Yeah, but I'm going to be honest with you. I take my relationship, and this is important, I take my relationship with Kim very, very seriously. Our culture will have a tendency to maybe diminish and say marriage isn't that big of a deal. Let me tell you something, it is huge. It can be an incredible experience, and I believe that's the way God intended it. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. Like, subscribe, share,
yes,
and join us again for the next exciting episode of
Better Together.